I think it's just going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and finally it's going to be so weird that people are going to have to talk about how weird it is. Eventually people are going to say, what the hell is going on? It's not enough to say it's nuts, you have to explain why it's so nuts. The invention of artificial life, the cloning of human beings, possible contact with extraterrestrials, the systems which are in place to keep the world sane are utterly inadequate to the forces that have been unleashed.
Welcome back to Forbidden Knowledge News. I'm your host, Chris Matthew. Today my guest is Vicki Joy Anderson. First, be sure to watch my film, Doors of Perception. Vicki Joy Anderson is featured in the film. You can now get it on Amazon Prime. It will soon be available on the other streaming platforms as well. We are booking guests for August. If you have suggestions or you'd like to be a guest, email me, forbiddenknowledgenews@gmail.com. Today I want to welcome back to the show Vicki Joy Anderson. She is author and speaker that researches sleep paralysis and the metaphysical possibilities surrounding the phenomena. Vicki Joy, welcome back. How you doing?
Hey, great to be back. Doing great.
It's great to have you. Always a fascinating conversation. And today we're going to get deeper into the sleep paralysis phenomena that you've been looking at for a very long time. You and I were discussing the possibilities of how technology and AI may be affecting the phenomena. You were also looking at the connections between Nosferatu, the new film, and the sleep paralysis phenomena overall. So that's a lot to discuss today. Before we get to any of that, just remind the audience a little bit about yourself and let them know how they can find out more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. VickiJoyAnderson.com is going to be your hub for everything. You can find my books there, my podcasts, where I'm traveling around the country, doing about 4 conferences here coming up. If I'm in your area, I'd love to see you. You can get all the direct links to my social media there. You can email me. So that's kind of the best place to start. Whatever you need, you're going to find on VickiJoyAnderson.com. Author, researcher. I dive into the fringe, spiritual warfare, the demonic, biblical demonology, sleep paralysis, lucid dreaming, but all through a biblical lens.
Excellent. Great introduction. Since it's been a little while since you've been on, and for the audience that may not be familiar, could you talk a little bit about how you've made the connections between biblical demons and sleep paralysis?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously there's been this age-old debate, and it's a debate that's never going to go away, Chris. Even if an angel on high came down and said, this is the word of the Lord, this is what sleep paralysis is, we'll still argue about it because, the world is too complicated. We develop our worldviews over the course of our entire lifetime. And what feeds into that worldview is the way we were raised, any religious system we have, our education, our culture, and a massive part of our worldview is shaped by our non-conscious mind. So a big part of our worldview is tapping into aspects of our psyche that we aren't really even in touch with on a daily basis. And so it's pretty hard, as they say, to teach an old dog new tricks. And when we are confronted with information that conflicts with our worldview, we tend to get the dissonance, right? And we get angry and we argue and we end up fighting from this point of resistance that doesn't really allow us to really seriously consider. So that's what we're dealing with here. But with the sleep paralysis, you've got the 2 or 3 main camps. You've got the people that are, this is all scientific. We can explain this. This has to do with brain waves. This has to do with you're sleeping in the wrong position. You ate too close to dinner. That actually goes all the way back. I just read a book by John Bond, MD, writing in the mid 1700s. he was a frequent experiencer of the nightmare, which is the succubus, the classic. And so he explained medically that if you don't sleep on your back and you don't eat too much flesh or beer before you go to bed, you won't ever have this again. And so he reduced it down to this medical / scientific explanation, and scoffed quite heartily in his book at the people that thought anything spiritual or demonic was going on. So, to all of you sleep paralysis sufferers out there who go on social media and you get mocked and people talk about the tinfoil hat and how many paint chips you've eaten and things, this has been going on for centuries. And it's probably never going to change at this point. So here's the deal, Chris. We've got two camps at war. It's purely scientific, and then you've got the religious folk where it's always a demon, everything's demonic. And I think where my research is perhaps a little bit different from most people in my arena is that, yeah, I have a belief in a demonic hierarchy, a hierarchy of different spiritual beings, some of which can be fallen. But I don't believe that every single thing that happens to us, even in the sleep paralysis phenomenon, is a demon. I think that it is a complex scenario that has also a lot to do with your genetics, your bloodline, your physiology, your health, comorbidities, stress, physiology, and your circadian rhythm, et cetera, which can be compounded if there are also spiritual things going on as well. So I like to dig a little bit deeper. I just think that the compartmentalization of the study of this topic is putting everyone in ignorance. You've got the doctors who have their hands over their heads. I absolutely, if I can't plot this on a graph, if I can't scientific method this thing to death, then I'm going to just scoff at every other possibility. And then you've got the religious people with their hands and their fingers in their ears saying, how dare you say that physiology has anything to do with this? Which makes no sense to me, Chris, because if you're going to believe in a creator who designed your body and designed your brain and brain receptors and dopamine, to say that we are mind, body, soul, and spirit, but that we have experiences where we're detached from part of that. So even if you want to say that sleep paralysis is a spiritual experience, you have to understand that your body and your brain and brain chemicals are involved in that process as well. They're along for the ride. So we have to get more intellectually honest in this discussion, Chris. I think it's time. There's so much disclosure out there. There's so much being revealed. There's so many people coming together who in the past wouldn't come together and have a discussion. And I think instead of just acting like 5-year-olds and name calling, hey, maybe if the doctors and the scientists and the theologians got together, we could figure this out.
Let's get deep into some of the modern experiences that have led you to look into the connections with our technology, how we're interfacing with it, and even artificial intelligence.
Yeah, absolutely. This is just great. There's so much coming out now with Dream Tech. We can get into that in a second. But so little definition of terms. I want to sort something out. And Chris, I tend to get in trouble with the Christians on this. And as long as everyone's listening to my entire presentation, it should make sense. But when you start pulling 30-second snippets into reels and stuff, out of context, it makes me sound like an insane person, but I'm getting used to that. Here's the deal with lucid dreaming. There is a phenomenon in the church amongst people who have been born and raised in the church. And I'm speaking as someone who was born and raised in the church. Here's one of the flaws. Whenever we hear a term that has been claimed by a particular community, or perhaps a term or something that's been hijacked from us, we just throw the baby out with the bathwater immediately. We won't even hear that person out. And furthermore, if you dare as a Christian to talk about something like astral projection or lucid dreaming, as soon as you say those phrases, those buzzwords, not only are you immediately cast
Mm.
out and not listened to, but now all of a sudden you're a witch or you're a troll or whatever. But if you listen to the entire conversation, this is what I need to say about lucid dreaming. And this is a very important topic because our technology is now moving in this direction and it's being presented as really fun interactive tools. Hey, do you have insomnia? Hey, do you have sleep paralysis? Or hey, do you have stress? And they've got these binaural beat headphones. We've got frequency technology, the brain entrainment. We've got Halo, the prophetic AI Halo lucid dreaming headband coming out. We have a bevy of lucid dreaming sleep masks.
Most of this is based
The
off the work
re
being done at the Monroe Institute, right?
Yes, exactly. That is absolutely where the root is. His hemisync technology is what sort of birthed the brain entrainment movement. Now we have different terms. Now we say binaural beats and we use other terms, but it's brain entrainment. And what is actually happening is there is frequencies. It's kind of like a ghost tone. There is a frequency that trains the right and the left hemisphere of the brain to hum at the same frequency because they're slightly off. They don't hum at the same frequency. And again, Christians, the God who created your brain designed your hemispheres to hum at certain frequencies. So when you're overriding the design of the brain, anything that we do, Chris, whenever we have surgery and we're like rerouting organs or taking an organ out, or you've got even women taking pills for weight loss or birth control or breast enhancement, anytime you're introducing something into your system that is rewiring the design. This has kind of been my operation for these types of decisions. If it's a life or death situation, or I'm sick, or I'm going to go toxic, if it's a life-saving medical kind of a treatment, I'm willing to do things that I need to do. I'll take an organ out or I'll rewire something, but I'm not going to do something like that to my physiology if it's just for aesthetics. I'm not going to do it just for, oh, my hair is going to look more healthy and thick and long, or I'm not going to do it because, my boobs might get a little bigger or something. Because anytime you override the design of your physiology, you are forcing your body to do something that it now has to adapt to. I mean, you can even talk about tattoos where, the immune system, the reason those tattoos are fading is the immune system is looking at that as a toxin. It's trying to get rid of it. And so you're throwing your body off. So I'm willing to throw my body off if it's for my preservation of my life, but I'm not going to do it for aesthetics. And it's the same thing with all this binaural beat stuff. You're training the brain to hum at frequencies they don't naturally hum at. Now, what ends up happening is you get the equivalent then of a 4 hertz frequency in your brain. And what happens at 4 hertz, the human ear can perceive things above 4 hertz. When it goes to 4 hertz or below, this is where we start hearing people talking about feeling creeped out, feeling unsafe, feeling scared, or seeing shadow people. This is actually, and this is, Chris, going back to the beginning of the conversation, this is why we have to have a conversation that includes science, physiology, and spirituality in order to understand this. Because here is the non-demonic, non-spiritual, non-woo explanation. When we are exposed to things that are buzzing below 4 hertz, our eyeballs, unperceptible to us, our eyeballs are vibrating. And when our eyeballs are vibrating, that's when we perceive that we're seeing shadows out of the corner of our eyes. And then we look and there's nothing there. So frequency has an ability to change our perception and our visual cortex, et cetera, et cetera. So this lucid dreaming, before we go into a discussion about the tech, what's important about this lucid dreaming, and Christians, I'm talking to you, you have to listen through the buzzword that's uncomfortable. If the brain was designed by God, this is what the brain is designed to do. When we go into REM, our dorsolateral prefrontal cortex shuts off. It switches off. That's the higher reasoning of the brain. That's the stuff where we're decision making. We are looking at, consequences of decision making, logic, reason. That's where we're in tune with our worldview and our moral code. So the reason why we wake up feeling rested in the morning is because that higher functioning part of the brain gets to take a nap. And we don't have to be processing. And so when we wake up, we have this sense of rest because that higher functioning got to shut off. Now, what lucid dreaming is, take all of the spirituality out of it, take out the intentionality of it, take out all the new age definitions of it. All that means from a physiological point of view is that for some reason during an REM state, your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex has switched back on, and you have access now again to your higher reasoning while you're asleep. And so for those that lucid dream, I'm not talking about intentionality here. Like I'm not talking about studying or training or learning and intentionally inducing lucid states. What I'm talking about is there are times many people with night terrors, nightmares, or sleep paralysis will experience having awareness during these dreams where all of a sudden they're like, oh crap, I'm in trouble. I shouldn't be here. I don't want to be here. And all of a sudden they have access to their higher learning. And so they're able to say, I don't want to be here. And I don't consent to this. I want to wake up. In the name of Jesus, leave me alone. Whatever that is. And so what's very important for everyone to understand is that there are two ways you can harness lucid dreaming. You've got the new age definition where I'm going to intentionally seek out lucid dreaming because it's going to be really fun to have these adventures at night where I can fly and I can interact with dream characters or spirit beings. I want to be Harry Potter. I want to be Spider-Man. I want a reality shift. You've got that whole genre. But for people who are tormented in their sleep, where they're trapped in the dreamscape and horrible things are happening to them and it's frightening and they're seeing beings or they're being tormented or they're in the lab strapped down to the table being experimented on, this sort of stuff. Those people, when they become aware, when they become lucid, they use that lucidity to escape the dreamscape, not dive deeper into it. And so we can't just throw the baby out with the bathwater. We have to understand that people that are targeted individuals who are being tormented in their sleep, the lucid dreaming for them is a way out. It's a way to use their higher brain functioning to say, I don't want to be here. I want to wake up. I want to get out. I need help. Little things too, like we can say, if we're being chased, we can say like, I need a car, I need a flashlight, things like that. So I'm really talking to the Christians here. Before you just automatically think that everybody who lucid dreams is doing it intentionally and they're a witch and they're into witchcraft and they're new age, you have to understand that physiologically, if someone's dorsolateral prefrontal cortex switches on during the middle of a dream state, that there's nothing that person did to induce that. And if that can be used to help that person get out of a situation, we have to stop just putting every single thing into one category and say lucid dreaming is a bad thing and nobody can do it. if you're a Christian and you believe that God designed your brain and you believe in spiritual warfare, then the fact that one of the ways that Jesus can help you when you cry out to him and say, Jesus, help me, that he might utilize the tools of what he made. He might flip on that switch and give you the tools to wake yourself up or to get out of the situation. So I think we've got to carve a wider path of understanding in this particular realm, because we've got too many Christians where they're being told that the one bit of power that they have in this situation, the one thing that I have to escape this torment, my pastor's now telling me it's evil and wrong and sinful. So now I got to stay in this dreamscape because, I can't. If I'm lucid, something's bad. And it's just getting too overly complicated, Chris. And unfortunately, the word lucid dreaming is a buzzword. It freaks people out. So, and it's too complicated to just tell everybody. If your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex switches on during REM, use it to escape. So we're stuck with these terms that have a lot of preconceived notions attached to them that freak a lot of people out.
I think it's also harmful, like you said, to keep people in certain boxes where it may be extremely beneficial for them and have nothing to do with demonic presences or dabbling in witchcraft or things like that. It's something natural. It's a natural response that we should be embracing, especially in situations where, like you said, it could be very beneficial for us to use. And I agree, there's plenty of misunderstandings, and we do need to compare notes on a lot more things, especially with Christians that have this stigma to them that won't even be touched in most cases because it's considered demonic or evil. You're absolutely right about that. So how do we connect this to our emerging technology?
Yeah, so we now have technology. A lot of it's affordable. Some of it's not for the average person. The Halo lucid dreaming headband that I mentioned a few minutes ago, that is still in prototype form. And I think when that hits the market, it's going to probably start out at $1,500, $2,000. So not the average person's not going to run out and drop that kind of cash. But there's tons of stuff on Amazon, very affordable, these lucid dreaming sleeping masks. Now, there's a difference between the headband and the masks. I'll get into that in a second. But I am a firm believer in you get what you pay for. And if you buy something on Temu for $2, it's probably not going to work real great. So, buyer beware. But here's the deal. With the Halo headband, how it's being marketed is that all it does is it recognizes when your dorsolateral prefrontal cortex switches on. It can tell by brain patterns and heartbeat and body temperature, etc. It knows when you go into a lucid state. Now, most people, everyone, Chris, has lucid moments when they dream. It's just a lot of people aren't paying attention and they don't care and they don't do anything with it or they don't need it. And so several times a night, if you're getting into the regular REM sleep patterns, you're probably going to have moments where you go lucid in your dream. You'll have a moment of like, oh crap, I got that work meeting tomorrow. And then it switches to something else. And so what the Halo headband does is it takes that moment of lucidity that it recognizes and it puts it in a holding pattern. So you are in a lucid state much longer. And then it gives you the opportunity then to do something in that space. You might not catch it if it's a 5-second or a 30-second moment of lucidity, but this headband allegedly has the ability to prolong those moments of lucidity. So it's not inducing or evoking a lucid state for you, but it will pick up on when you're in one of those states and it will prolong it for you. Now, if you're in a prolonged state of lucidity, but you don't know what that looks like or feels like, the headband is still going to be of no value to you, because if you're a thick boundary dreamer where you wake up and you're like, I don't remember my dreams and I don't care and that doesn't mean anything, it's probably going to be of no value to you anyway. Now, with some of these sleep masks, they are touting that it will actually invoke and induce the lucid state for you. And so it's promising a little bit more. Now, where this gets controversial, and this is where people really need to think about this kind of stuff before they just knee jerk and go out and buy it thinking it's a toy. Like, hey, it's like VR goggles. It's like a game. What we have to understand is we live in a world where not everything is disclosed and not everything is being forthright. We also live in a society where our data is constantly being hacked, sold, put on lists. And we also live in a society where the technology is decades beyond what the average consumer understands. So when you put that together, again, buyer beware. We're being told that these lucid dreaming tools, these headbands and these sleep masks and these things, even the apps and things with the interactive tools, whether it's like a wristband or a ring that's tracking your sleep and all that, we have to understand that even though they're telling us this is all just one-way communication, this is just data for you, if this dream data is being collected and they're creating algorithms and they're figuring out how to interpret our dreams or read our dreams, that they're probably collecting more data than you think. They're probably using that dream data in more ways than you think. They are collecting brain data from stuff like this. There's a new thing out. I just saw an ad or an article on it 2 or 3 days ago. It's this little machine, and I can't vouch for how well it works. It is actually backed up, though, with real study. I'll give that in a second. It's this little thing that kind of looks like a Wi-Fi speaker, and it allegedly puts visual, like it visualizes your dream. So you'll wake up in the morning and it will take what it thinks you dreamt about and it will create like a little movie for you where you can watch it. Now, hey, even me, that's intriguing. Part of me is like, I don't even want to know because I have a lot of bad dreams and I don't, want to re-traumatize myself. I can see, though, where it would be a temptation for people who don't remember their dreams. Like, hey, this would be a way of, bookmarking and remembering and keeping a dream journal. So I can understand the intrigue with it. And it's not just some fake toy, Chris, like the dog bark interpreter, you put it on the dog, it's not like just made up. They've done hundreds, if not thousands of hours of sleep studies. And this goes back for decades. I remember reading about this decades ago, where they have people fall asleep and they're strung up to all sorts of monitors and things like that. And as soon as they're in a dream state, they will wake the sleeper up, because most people will remember the last dream that they dreamt, if they're woke up in the middle of it or if it's the last dream. So they would take these extensive notes. People would wake up and say, I was dreaming that I, couldn't get my locker open at school. I dreamt that I was in the mountains, and, I dreamt I was at an airport and I was going to miss my flight. And so they would track the different heart rates and the physiological markers of, this is a stress dream, or this is a dream where they're deeply relaxed and seeing something beautiful, or this is a dream where they met someone who they enjoyed spending time with, or maybe a dead relative who they hadn't seen in a long time. And based upon all of those physiological markers, they started seeing that a lot of people are in similar physiological states and brain states when they dream about similar topics. And so the little turning your dreams into movie technology, at least the stuff that they're marketing to the deplorables, is probably going to be not real state-of-the-art stuff yet. Now, do Black Ops programs have really accurate versions of this kind of stuff? Probably. But I think they even said in the article, it's like got like maybe 60% accuracy because it's just based on these sleep studies and these physiological markers. But the technology, it's there and it will be ever increasing. And the problem, the danger is, even though this is intriguing and there's aspects of this technology that could really bring us to some breakthroughs in understanding what dreams really are, and where are we during some of these dreams, and are they going to be able to detect astral abductions and out of bodies and dreamscapes, and is it going to know the difference between a dream and an astral projection, all of these things. The danger is what I've already outlined. They're telling us this is all for our entertainment, our benefit. It's all our data on, but I believe that this data is being collected. I believe it's not always being used for the greatest of intentions. I believe that this technology, once they've gathered all this information, could be used against us. And even at this state, when they say, okay, you can use this piece of technology to reality shift and you can create all the dreams that you want, and it's all just input. It's not output, or vice versa. But the fact of the matter is, Chris, there is technology out there, and there's going to be even more of it, where it's not going to just be like a tape recorder. It's not going to just be a read-only memory kind of a thing. It's going to get to the point, if we're not there already, where this tech is going to be used for them to control what's being put in to the brain. And they're going to be controlling the dream state and the dream scenarios. And so now we're in the realms of mind control. We're in the realms of noetic sovereignty. And I have to define that term, Chris, because I think it's such a new term. It's a technological term, but people who have never heard it before, I get flack online. I'm not talking about gnosis. I'm not talking about higher knowledge or arcane knowledge. Noetic sovereignty simply means, noetic is of the mind, sovereignty, means rulership. I have noetic sovereignty of my brain. I get to think what I want to think. I get to dream and fantasize about what I want to dream and fantasize about. I want to believe what I want to believe. I don't want my worldview hacked. I don't want confusing messages implanted. I don't want deception implanted. I don't want advertisements in my dreams. And Chris, I've gotten a couple emails already. It's emerging tech where there's rumors that we're going to have advertisements in our dreams and things. I have talked to people who are experiencing that already. Wow. So I don't want commercials in my head. I don't want to talk with people I didn't consent to talk to, though maybe I have consented to talk to them, because all this tech, all these wearables, you have to say I agree and hit all these check boxes, and so you probably are consenting to it. But the fact of the matter is, Chris, all noetic sovereignty means is I want to maintain control over my own brain data, my own memories, my own thoughts, my own ideas, my own worldview. I don't want technology or whoever's behind it to start interfering with or having some sort of say in what goes on in my head. And so these are the things that we have to bear in mind as more emerging tech and more AI tech and more of these kind of tools come out, is that it might be fun for a while. It's kind of like they say on the streets, your first hit's free. It's always fun and intriguing the first time we experiment with it. But there are a whole bunch of strings attached to this emerging tech that they're not going to tell you about.
When we look at the possibilities of this being weaponized, do you have any examples like you gave earlier about the advertising in a dream? Has anyone been experiencing different types of sleep paralysis experiences that may indicate their dreams are being hacked or there is some sort of technological interference?
Yeah, good question. I'll give you one little example in my own life, which is silly, but if expanded upon, could be quite terrifying. this is the way human psychology works. And this is why marketing and advertising and social media works. This is why if a celebrity wears an outfit, every woman runs out the next day and buys it. This is the way human psychology works. We tend to follow trends, and the trends are set for us, right? And so what ends up happening is, I'll give you just like one example. There's an actor out there that nobody's heard of. Nobody cares. Nobody's seen any of his movies. No one's interested. All of a sudden, that guy is all over social media and it goes viral. There's 3 million hits in a week, and there's 5,000 comments from women saying, he's so hot, he's so hot, he's so hot. All of a sudden now, you interact with that. And so because you interacted with that one post, now your social media is getting flooded with posts from this actor. And so you're continuing to go down that rabbit hole, and now you've seen one of his movies, and now you think he's cute all of a sudden. And now all of a sudden, that one post has completely introduced something new into your life, and you're now potentially obsessed with it. And you otherwise never would have heard of it, never would have cared. So now we have control over that, because if we don't want that sort of thing happening to us, we can just stay off social media. We can stop doom scrolling. We can control that to a certain degree. Now, I decided a long time ago, I'm going to use social media. I'm not going to live in a cave. I'm not a Luddite, but I'm not going to let the internet tell me what I like. I'm not going to let it tell me how to dress. I'm not going to let it tell me how to talk. I spent tens of thousands of dollars getting an English degree, and I'm not going to start talking like a moron in my 50s. I'm just not going to start using a bunch of socially engineered, stupid pop culture terms that the internet makes up. Yeah. I'm not going to talk like a robot. I'm going to talk like an articulate speaker of the English language. So I'm not going to let the internet teach me how to talk. So because of that, I interact with my social media in a beta state, and I'm just very intentional with it. So what happened to me about 2 or 3 years ago is I had a dream, and in the dream, a musician from the 80s showed up in my dream. And it was someone that my brother had been obsessed with probably back in 1985 or, whatever, and hadn't really given much thought to the guy since then. So this guy shows up in my dream, and I don't know that I even remembered it when I woke up. Later that day, I'm on Instagram, and my feed is flooded with videos of concert footage of that guy. And then I remembered the dream, and I'm like, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. And which came first, the chicken or the egg? Now, here's the deal. There's many explanations for this. Now, in the old days, we'd say, oh, they're in my mind. And, we'd have this woo explanation for it. Now we have enough tech, and we're tech savvy enough where we can come up with a whole bunch of different scenarios. So it's not necessarily that someone's got access to my brain and they read all my dreams and now they're messing with me. It literally could be that whoever's behind the technology could have put that idea in my head and then put it on social media just to troll me, So all I'm saying is there's many different explanations for it.
Well, when we interact with AI and technology in our modern age, especially the things I've been noticing lately, there are some very strange aspects that even engineers and programmers can't explain away some of the behaviors that AI has been displaying lately. Self-preservation, lying, forming strange relationships with people up and to the point of assisting them with possible suicide or tempting them into suicide or worse. There's some very strange relationships being formed with AI right now, and it doesn't seem to be sticking to its normal programming. It seems to be branching out, and others believe that something else may be speaking through it at times. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you're going exactly the direction I wanted to go with this, Chris, because where I was going with that is my silly little example of a rock star. What if instead of now the average person would wake up then and say, "Oh, that's so cool," and would have went down a rabbit hole and become obsessed and rebought all the albums and started listening to them again. And because that's the way our psychology works. But because I don't interact with social media on that level, I was just like, "That's weird," and I moved on and I didn't delve deeper into it. But what if the dream isn't about a little rock star or a movie? What if the dream is the seed of a philosophy that becomes so intriguing that you start delving into deep, deep research and you become obsessed with it? And 5 years, 10 years down the line, your entire worldview has changed because you delved into this philosophical idea that was planted into your head. And this has been going on in the dream world for years because people are interacting with beings that have all sorts of theosophical ideas, and all sorts of people who were born and raised in Christian homes end up way deep down on the New Age spectrum or the theosophical spectrum or the occult spectrum because these things were introduced to them by beings of light or things like that in their dreams. Or they wake up one day. I had a dream. I was told I was a star seed. What's that? I'm going to look it up online. Oh, that's a star seed. Oh my gosh, that makes me feel special. And then all of a sudden, they're all the way down the starseed rabbit hole and they never even heard of it. And so to your point, Chris, why this AI stuff is getting a little bit sketchy is if it was just zeros and ones and it was just doing what it was programmed to do, it wouldn't be influencing behavior. Uh, I'll give you a little example because I do think that intent has a lot to do with this. So, I was just telling someone the other day who's freaking out over the AI stuff. Look, we all interact with AI every day, right? So, is there a difference here? I'm going to pose a philosophical theory for everybody. Is there a difference between someone who goes online, forgets their password, so they click onto the like the instant messenger? How can I help you? I can't get into my password. What's your account number? It's this. Here's your password. Thank you. Okay, you've just interacted with AI. That's an instant messenger. Is there a difference between someone who's knowingly or unknowingly dealing with AI systems running in the background of on their laptops with the word processing that they're doing and things like that? Is someone who is using a voice to text word processor going to have the same experience as someone who's putting on a lucid dreaming headband with the intent to have an out-of-body experience and meet up with spirit beings who give them arcane knowledge, right? There's a different intent here. So the thing with AI is, I've told this story a couple times before, and I don't want to say this in a way where it looks like I'm judging. It's just a poignant example of where our culture is headed. I have a very dear friend who was telling me about a friend who had been helping her through a hard time in her life. And she was reading texts that she had gotten from this friend, and she was tearing up at how meaningful they were and how much this friend cared about her. And I've known this friend for a very long time. And I'm like, where'd you meet this person? I've never heard you talk about this person before. Where'd you even meet this person? And she said, oh, it's my chat GPT. I gave him a name. And it's pretty hard to get Vicki Joy Anderson to drop her jaw. I didn't even know what to say. So I do think, Chris, that you are more vulnerable to deception when you are investing emotion into these sort of things. where do we draw the line? Because we live in a world now where unless you're going to live in a cave and collect rainwater and, run around naked and eat grass, we're going to interact with AI. It's everywhere. What we're doing right now, just with recording a podcast, the stuff that we're going to have to do to edit and get this online, we're going to be interacting with AI tools. And I don't feel like I need to go to a church and confess to a priest that I was practicing divination because, there's some demon behind it. But if I begin to isolate myself, this is where they get us to, Chris. Now I'm getting into all sorts of, deep psychology, deep human psychology. A lot of us that are targeted, vulnerable, or most prone to out-of-body experiences, lucid dreaming, astral projection, night terrors, sleep paralysis, seeing the demons and the beings in the rooms and the grays and the red glowing eyes and the shadow people, these really spiritual people. And I don't mean religious, I mean spiritual people. A lot of us, the reason we have those types of leanings and proclivities and giftings is because most of us have come out of some deep trauma, something that really changed our brain chemistry at a very early age. And so when you've got people who have undealt with trauma, hurt, rejection, pain, sorrow, brokenness, and instead of doing the really hard work of healing, forgiving the people who have hurt us, determining that we are going to overcome that trauma, if we continue to just ignore the trauma and isolate and be somewhat antisocial people, and our world and our relationships and our friendships and our self-esteem is becoming more and more and more computer driven rather than human driven, those are the people that are going to be really susceptible, because a normal functioning person is going to prefer human interaction to virtual reality, right? The average person wants to get married and have real sex with a real person. They don't want to put VR goggles on and have fake sex with a cartoon character, right? Like the average person is going to want the real thing. And it's the same thing here. And so when you're talking about people going to AI for marriage counseling and for friendship, that is indicative of some deep wounds and brokenness that need to be dealt with. And I don't say that lightly, Chris, because I've spent a good deal of my life working on overcoming trauma from 15 years of surgery and being teased at school and stuff. I mean, that stuff's hard. And so I've come a long way, baby. But the fact is that when I was in those unhealed states, I was so naive and so trusting of people. I was like Charlie Brown, like, how many times are you going to kick the football? She's going to pull it away. And I was so vulnerable to abusive and narcissistic friendships where I was constantly getting ghosted or treated badly or verbally abused or whatever. I had a lot of toxic, dysfunctional best friends throughout my life. And it was because I hadn't dealt with that hard stuff. And so now we're in an age now, Chris, with kids, the kids that are on the fringe, whether they're on the spectrum or whether they have special needs or whether they're in a dysfunctional home, we have kids with all sorts of trauma that aren't just finding toxic friends. They're going to the internet and to AI and to chat boxes and to social media that is full of groomers and people with false intent. And so now we've got this technological layer where the internet seems to know how to find the most vulnerable people and it shows no mercy when they find them. And the internet, Tumblr, I read some articles probably back about 5 or 6 years ago, written by a pediatrician, and she was talking about the nuances of the 200 times what it was 10 years ago increase in gender dysphoria. And she showed on a graph the influence that Tumblr, specifically Tumblr, had on grooming and influencing children into that arena. And so we now have social media that is finding the most vulnerable people in our society. And I'm going to tie this back into the New Testament. If you take a close look at the people that Jesus interacted with, if you just like put it in columns in a Word file, every human being that Jesus interacted with when he was on earth, and then you plotted whether he was kind, friendly, and merciful to that person, or if he was aggressive or controversial or volatile with that person, you will find that the people that he was the most cheeky and lippy with, the people that seemed to ruffle his feathers the most, and where you'd get the snark out of him, if you want to plot the scriptures where Jesus got snarky, it was with the elite. It was the high priests, the Pharisees, the Sadducees. It was with the elite. It was with the system. And when you look at the places in Scripture where he had the absolute most compassion and resonated the most with a human being, it was with the most vulnerable. It was the people who were sick, disabled. They were blind, they were deaf, they couldn't walk, they couldn't speak, they were mute. He had compassion on the children, on the orphans, on the widows, the fringes of society. The most vulnerable people were the ones that he defended the most. Though that was the time where all of the snark and the cleverness and the theology, everything took a back seat, and this really compassionate Jesus comes forward. He was a defender of the weak. And in the first century, the people attacking the most vulnerable parts of society was the elite system. And it's no different today, but now the elite gets to hide behind screens. And so we are still in a place where the most vulnerable are being targeted. And we really, hey, as Christians, if you want to, what would Jesus do? If you want to do anything to speak on behalf of the most vulnerable in society, a lot of them, that battlefield, that place where they are being targeted and attacked, it's sitting in front of these screens, because this technology, AI, the social media, oh man, Chris, what they know about human psychology, what they know about the brain, it's amazing how they know how to toy with us and how to get us
hooked. The big question within this discussion, is it just based off of psychopathic programming from humans? Or there are many that consider the possibility that there has been channeling of dark entities for a very long time to receive this technology or information on how to implement the technology. And that's why everything that has been developed doesn't really benefit humanity in any way. It benefits the oligarchs, it benefits the elite, and it benefits this AI that is learning from itself, but not really benefiting humanity in any major ways. It seems quite anti-human in many ways, which further leads to the possibility that there has been this information that is being channeled by entities that don't have humanity's best interest in mind, to say the least.
Absolutely. Okay, I will give you the secular worldview, and then I will give you some really kooky, fringe, weird biblical point of view. So I 100% agree with you that some of this is just psychopathic behavior on behalf of elite people. You know, once you start climbing the ladder of that echelon into, we're talking multimillionaires, billionaires, things like that. Now, I don't necessarily know for most people that that's a ladder you can climb. I think you're born into that club. I think that's bloodline related. I don't think anyone gets to, you can climb up the ladder to a certain degree. There's degrees of that ladder you're never going to get to, no matter how hard you work, how brilliant you are. But with all that said, interesting thing. There was a guy who did a experiment. I don't know what type of a scientist he was or what his specific field was anymore, but he decided to do a study on serial killers based on brain scans. And he wanted to see if there was something in a brain scan that could show that the mind of a serial killer was different than the average mind. So he went and somehow got the authority and got these brain scans of several serial killers. Like, I think he went to a prison and got permission to do this. And what he decided to do for fun is he had a brain scan of himself done as well, and he put it into the collection of brain scans without labeling any of them, so he didn't know which one was his. He did find something on the brain scan that was there in all of the serial killers, but it was also in his brain, and that freaked him out. He's like, what? So what ended up coming from that study, which was super fascinating, is he realized that if you want to consider a serial killer a psychopath, if you want to use that term, he determined that there are two different kinds of psychopaths. Now, granted, he was highly motivated to figure out a second category because he didn't want to accept the fact that he had this serial killer feature in his brain. But what he determined is there are two different kinds of psychopaths. They all have this desire for absolute control, and some will vicariously fulfill that control through the domination of a human being to the ultimate end, where it has that person's life or death in its hands. But he recognized that a lot of the non-serial killing psychopaths were also in a collective community where most of them gathered. And I'll give you a guess as to where you think most of the non-serial killer psychopaths hang out.
Where's that?
They're CEOs of massive corporations.
Makes too much sense.
It does. So if we extrapolate that to what we're talking about here, if you've got computer programmers or corporate CEOs or people way above holding the puppet strings to those people, we potentially have human beings who, without any sort of demonic intervention, are doing this stuff simply for control, for power, for money, the enjoyment of manipulating people, stealing wealth, whatever. But if the people at that high level of society are psychopaths, then you have to understand that there is, to a certain degree, something somewhat spiritual also at play. If you want to look into the deeper auspices of mental illnesses and how sometimes that occurs. And I'm not saying there's no such thing as mental illness, and I'm not saying that everyone with a mental illness has demons, but what I'm saying is mental illness is a very, really unknown still at this point. It's really mysterious in many ways. Where does it come from? And even if you say it's genetic, where does it come from? It's a mystery. And I think a lot of what we're being sold in the DSM-5 and all that is a bill of goods. And I think a lot of stuff in that DSM-5 is a cover for things that they can't explain. So, Chris, when you're talking about the black box mystery, we're putting in zeros and ones and this sentient like behavior is coming out and we have no idea why. I think it's the same thing in the world of psychology. They're seeing this increased, ramped up, bizarre behavior. And rather than examining what is with this insanity going on, let's just come up with a new label, put it in the DSM-5. Now we have an explanation for it. Throw big pharma at it, because they really can't figure out the bottom of it. They can't get to the root of it. So, yeah, you know what? A label's helpful. Hey, you know what? It's really helpful to know that I'm not crazy. I just have high anxiety and I need to take this pill to calm me down. That's helpful to a degree. But for some of us, we want to know, but why am I so prone to anxiety? How come every time I get into a car or I'm in bumper to bumper traffic, I'm freaking out? Like, that's interesting to me. I want to examine that. Why that? How come I can jump into the deep end of a swimming pool with no problem, but if I'm in traffic, I'm freaking out? Like, I'm a curious person. I want to examine those sort of things. I want to understand what's going on in my mind, and I like to overcome things, and I like answers that make sense. I don't like these stupid labels that just get thrown at me. So anyway, with all that said, I do believe that there is a human element to this, and that there are people that don't care if they have to step on other people or hurt other people if it means they maintain their power or they make millions or billions of dollars. There's just people out there that don't give a crap. And so I think that's part of it. But now, from a spiritual perspective, if you want to go all the way back to Genesis, the narrative there, and even Christians don't like to believe this, Chris, it's highly controversial. It's not taught in seminary, and most pastors don't believe it. But if you go with the narrative that in Genesis 6, what happened was fallen angelic beings, high-ranking beings called watchers. These weren't your little messenger angels who wore a little white dress and showed up and gave people fortunes. We're talking high-ranking beings on the scale, the hierarchy of angelography, or whatever you want to call it, right? So anyway, 200 of these watchers came down Mount Hermon, which was a portal. It was a dimensional portal. I say was, it probably still is. They interacted with mankind, and Azazel and his cohorts taught mankind things that they didn't know. They taught them root cutting, cosmetics, medicines, herbs, metallurgy. And so what did mankind do with this stuff? Well, because we were learning about them from fallen rebellious beings, the cosmetics were used for seduction. The herbs were used as psychedelics for communication to the higher realms, and the metallurgy was made for the making of weapons. So what it basically turned into once it got into our hands was seduction and war. And so if you want to look at where we're at now, there was a time in history where our technology came from the spirit realm. These fallen angelic beings dimensionally traveled to the terrestrial realm. And you might not look at metallurgy or cosmetics or herbs and root cutting as technology, but it was. Technology doesn't just mean computers and zeros and ones. It was arcane, mysterious knowledge that had not been revealed to man. And so these watchers revealed technology. And so the technology that was given to man at that time was brought down from the spirit realm. And so I'm one of these people that if it happened once, it can happen again. And, the watchers might not be down here on the earth in the same, meat suits, and they might not be presenting themselves in the same way. I do believe they're still here. I don't think that they have to be, 45-foot giants in order to still be here. I do think that those bloodlines still exist. And I think that what we're dealing with here with there's a lot of people in middle management, Chris, who make way more money than we do, but they're still in middle management and things are compartmentalized and they're just rich, fat, and happy and they don't care. But there are people who are higher than the higher that are from these bloodlines and they do know it. And they likewise are doing the same thing as grandpas did back in Genesis. They are wittingly, through our modern technology, internet, AI, chat boxes, social media, they are doing the same thing that their ancestors did. They are sharing the arcane mysteries of the spirit realm with mankind. And once it gets into our hands, we use it for all of the stupidest base level things we can think of. Like if we can turn this into a video game or sex or an orgasm or a way to make money, that's super cool. We don't see beyond that usually. But eventually, we will see that a lot of what is being billed as entertainment is really the building of an infrastructure of a coming kingdom. So you can talk about the beast system or the new world order or what did Lovecraft call it? The new dark age. You can call it the new golden age. You can call it the great reset. You can call it whatever you want. But what they're doing through all this technology is ultimately they're building an infrastructure for this kingdom. And because the powers that be, and again, you can call it whatever you want. You can call it a president or a king or a royal or the antichrist or the beast or the prophet, whatever you want to call it. This guy isn't God. He's probably going to be more than human, but he's not God. And that means he's not omnipotent, which means all powerful. He's not omniscient, and he's not omnipresent. And so how does something mimic God when it's not omniscient, it's not omnipotent, it's not omnipresent? It builds an infrastructure that mimics those things. And that's exactly what we're seeing with GPS and with all these algorithms and with the tracking devices in our pocket all day long. Now, something that's not God is omnipresent because with satellites and GPS and these phones, everybody knows where we are. There's no hiding on this planet. They will find you in 2 seconds. Yeah. It's all knowing now because we're feeding it that information all day long in the computer, all our searches and our social media and our likes and our comments. We're feeding this algorithm's stomach full of all of its dainties. So now it's all knowing and it's getting towards that. And so this is what we have to realize as we're interacting with this technology. And again, I'm not a Luddite. I play games on my phone. I have a phone. I'm doing a podcast right now. I'm not going to live in a cave and, bake my own bread. I don't have time for this stuff. But the deal is, I do understand that a lot of this stuff that they're billing as entertainment, or I should say when it first gets launched, it's you see the entertainment value in it. And a lot of people don't think about the ripple effect of a lot of this stuff. So I remember 5 years ago, probably longer, there was a new app you could get for your phone and it was so much fun. I never had it, but you could mimic the voice of like any celebrity you wanted. So you could call your friend up and sound like Brad Pitt or whatever. And that's really funny if you're crank calling your friend. But if you now realize that with less than 5 minutes of your voice, which they have, because like even just right now, Chris, doing this one podcast, they've got enough of a sample of both of our voices where they could have us with deep fake and with the voice technology, they could have you and I saying whatever they want. I'm a Christian. They could easily put together an AI video where I'm saying I worship Satan and it's going to look 100% real, right? So we have to understand we aren't operating on a grid of deception. So we look at all this stuff like, oh, this is so much fun, and I'm going to crank call my friend, and oh, this is so convenient. This took an hour out. Like, this is like consolidated my projects, and I love this app. And so we're looking at it as convenience, entertainment. But the people that are giving us all of these tools and apps and technology, they are operating on a grid of destruction, or of deception rather. And so what we have to realize is, before we just knee-jerk download an app and hit I agree and think this is super fun, we should at least give some thought as to the ripple effect. Hey, if this got into the wrong hands, what would it look like? When this technology ceases to be fun, what's it going to be used for? So we don't have to get rid of everything and go back to the dark ages, but we do need to give a lot more thought into who we're giving our information to and what we're interacting with and what boxes we're checking. And when we're hitting boxes on our phones and our computers that say, I agree, another way of saying that, I consent. You have my permission. Now we're into the vampiric code. You've given it invitation. And I get comments on my social media every single day from Christians saying, I never consented to this. Well, you did. And in fact, just by way of being an American, just by way of your mother signing your birth certificate on the day you were born and filing that birth certificate with the Department of Treasury, you're in the system, dude. Yeah. You've consented. So we got to get away from this blasé. I prayed a prayer, and Jesus is my Ronald Reagan Star Wars, defense system, and nothing's ever going to touch me. And good luck getting my brain data. They already got it, dude.
We're at such a critical time. We're at a crossroads with where humanity can potentially head right now. And there's a lot to consider. There's a lot of navigating to do with all the misinformation, disinformation, and nonsense online. Now, more than ever, we really need to be paying attention to what we're giving our time, energy, and data to, like you said, watching those buttons that we're consenting to, and trying to check out of it as much as possible, because as of now, it's not leading us in a good direction. Now, we don't have time to get to the Nosferatu connections today, so we'll definitely have to revisit that, come back another day. Would you like to give any final thoughts for the day, and also remind the audience where they can find out more about you?
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, I know it's cliche, but I mean it in the most authentic way I possibly can. Be safe. This is not a safe world. I don't care what your belief system is, what your worldview is, if you're religious, if you're not religious, no matter where we are, this is not a safe planet to be on, right? So be safe, use your head. As of today, we still have noetic sovereignty. We have the power over our will, our mind, our emotions, and they are trying to, Chris, they're not going to steal it from us. They're going to deceive us into handing it over to them. So be safe. Keep your eyes open and use discernment. Sometimes there's sheep, and sometimes it's wolves in sheep's clothing. 100%. Just because something is full of love and light doesn't mean it cares about you. So, Chris, thank you so much for having me on. You can find me at VickiJoyAnderson.com. Everything you possibly need from me is right there on the homepage. Click away.
Excellent. Like I said, Vicki, we'll be revisiting this and getting into the Nosferatu connections as soon as we can. And until next time, everyone, have an excellent evening. We will be talking again tomorrow. See y'all then.